Thanks for tuning in again. Today we're going to talk about why I choose Sony camera gear. So I've had my business for about 5 years now, and throughout that time I've used multiple different camera bodies and brands. I've used Canon, Fuji, Nikon, Nikon and Sony. When I first started, a lot of people were still using DSLRs and mirrorless wasn't really a thing. My first camera was the Sony NEX6, which then evolved to the A6000 series and so on. So it was an APS-C size sensor. That's what I shot on. I didn't know any better. I picked up the NEX6 automatically with the electronic viewfinder. I could see my image before I actually took it, like the exposure, the correct exposure. When people would pick up my camera going from DSLR and say, oh wow, that's weird, that's whack, I didn't really understand what they were talking about because I hadn't used an optical viewfinder before. I'd only used the electronic with the mirrorless system. I was able to adapt my dad's old Canon 50mm 1.4 FD lens, and so I used manual focus for the first year of me picking up a camera, which I love. All I did was put that on 1.4 and just shot everything, you know, with the craziest amount of depth. The more that I started to actually take photos of people and interact with people, I quickly understood what they wanted to see out of the shot. So here I was thinking it was so cool, it was so blurry, but actually, you know, their eyes wouldn't be in focus. It was like a part of their shirt, which was a steep learning curve for me to be able to understand what people actually wanted and what actually created a great photo. So with the Sony system, I was able to see my exposure before I even took the shot, which is a huge advantage. I later on went and I owned a Canon 5D Mark III for a while, and I loved the way that felt compared to my NEX6 because it was a bit bulkier and I could really actually hold it. And then autofocus, I'd never had that before. So to have autofocus on a body was just like, my mind was blown. I was just so excited. I could literally just point anywhere and it would grab focus. From the evolution of the NEX6, I bought my first full frame camera, which was the Sony A7R. And to go from just a small sensor to a fully huge, maybe it was a 36 megapixel camera. I'll look up the details and then chuck them up. But 36 megapixel camera compared to something, I think the NEX6 was about 20 megapixels. For me to jump from APS-C to full frame was just such a huge step for me. And that's, I think, when I invested in the A7R, I feel like that's when I took my photography more serious. And shortly after that, that's when I started to shoot for people and get clients. So I didn't realize how much better my camera was going to be compared to the 5D Mark III. So the 5D Mark III was 20 megapixels, 24 megapixels, whatever it was, no one cares. What I had was 36 megapixels, so my images could be so huge and I could crop it to wherever I wanted. So for me to be able to understand also that I had the ability to crop when before I didn't have much room. Going from the APS-C, if you cropped it in, you kind of lose a little bit of resolution and your images aren't as sharp. So I had the A7R and then eventually had the 5D Mark III. So with the 5D Mark III and the A7R, I went and shot weddings. And at first, I really loved the Canon for all the wedding stuff. I'm not sure why. Maybe I just felt the autofocus was a bit quicker than the A7R at the current time, especially with the lenses that were available within that first period of Sony releasing their full frame cameras. So time went on and I was slowly, you know, going through my images from weddings that I'd shot with the Canon and realizing that actually the autofocus wasn't as great as I thought. It was actually missing focus a lot. And you know, whether I went back button focus or just normal trigger focus, it missed the mark. Shortly after using that A7R, I upgraded again to the A7R II. And I thought that this was it. This would be my camera that I'd use for the next 10 years because the advantages it had over the R were so much better. It went from 36 megapixels to 42 megapixels, and I had even more image than I could know what to do with. The A7R II, there definitely were upgrades and benefits. The body changed a little bit, I had the battery grip, and it just felt really nice in my hands. The shutter wasn't as loud, whereas with the A7R, it was just, people say it's like it's slamming a garage door because that's how loud the actual click was, the shutter. After using the A7R for a while, I started to realize that it had its flaws. And the flaw was that I like to work really fast when I'm on a shoot. So once I have the shot, that's it. Next outfit, change, whatever I'm shooting. At that time, it was a lot of fashion. So I was able to move really fast. But the problem with that R2 was that you could take the photo, but then the buffer time would take so long that if I went to try and review an image, I would literally have to wait like 30 seconds. And then if you did, say, a burst, 5 to 10 shots, it would be even longer. So you'd have to wait a minute before you actually got to review the shot. The way that I set up my mirrorless cameras is I don't actually have a auto review on. A lot of people on DSLRs, they probably have a 2-second or 5-second auto review just to see what they've captured. But because I have the mirrorless camera that actually allows me to see the image before I take it, I already know the exposure is going to be right. I know if my shutter speed's right, there's not going to be any blur, motion blur. So I actually don't auto review until later on, after I've already shot the whole style, and then I can have a bit of a look and then see, well, maybe we could try a few different angles and then go from there. But while I'm going, I'm just seeing straight through the lens and seeing exactly what I need to see, having that electronic viewfinder. There's many bonuses with the Sony. I'm not going to harp on about all these advantages, and there are disadvantages probably, but I don't know of any. Everyone used to complain about the battery life on the Sonys, but I always had 4 to 6 batteries on me, and I did notice when the body changed from the R to the R2 and they went with the new Z battery, man, I could shoot like, a whole day on just a single battery. So the battery wasn't an issue anymore. And then the A9 came out, and that has been a workhorse. That is the camera that I still use today. I'm actually filming on it right now. So I originally bought the A9 because of the autofocus capabilities. It was just so damn good. What I was shooting was fashion and weddings. I wasn't even shooting sport yet. For me to be able to have up to 20 frames a second raw was a game changer. I feel like I got the shot a lot quicker. I took more frames for sure. And at first I had to learn how many frames to take. Just be cautious of the amount of photos I was taking, because just say on a normal wedding day, instead of taking maybe 2,000 photos, all of a sudden I was taking 5,000 photos. And that's cool because you have the chance to get the shot, right? If you just hold down the button, you're gonna get one shot. But you really need to be able to control how many images you take. Just have a better ratio to crappy photos to good photos, right? So with each of these cameras, from the NEX6, I had to sell that to fund the A7R. And then I had to sell the A7R to fund the A7R II. And then vice versa, the A7R2 to fund the A9. So the A9 is the current body that I have. And back then, I wasn't doing any kind of video work. So now that I do video, and the A9 is reasonably sharp and the autofocus is great. So for video, the A9 didn't really seem like an option when I bought it, but now it's like an all-round camera. So in between using all of these Sony bodies, I actually have shot on other various cameras like the 1DX Mark II and then the Nikon D850. So I used the Nikon D850, I did an aerial job where I was in a helicopter hanging out the side doing a lot of survey kind of imagery. And it was so damn heavy. Like, I loved the size of it in my hand, but with the massive lens, it was like a 400mm lens. I can't remember, it was just so big. Maybe it was like 200 to 500mm lens. And it was hanging from a mount and it was just too heavy. So with using the Sony systems, A, they're light, B, the batteries actually do last forever, C, they have so many lenses now that you can choose from, and you can also just buy cheap adapters if you want to use other mounts like Canon or Nikon. So the versatility that Sony has is huge. You can't put a Sony lens on a Canon body. So a lot of people ask me what camera or what setup should they get if they're traveling or if they're starting their own small business and they want to take product photos or anything. The camera that I normally recommend is the A7 III because it has in-body stabilization, 4K video. I know a lot of cameras have that kind of functionality, but the A7 III, bang for buck, it's just such a great camera. I have a lot of friends that shoot on that and the price point isn't too high. So the benefit of using the Sony gear is also that a lot more of my friends now have Sony gear too. So if I'm ever stuck, I need a specific lens or I need a second body, I can just borrow it off a friend. Whereas say 5 years ago, no one would have had the Sony gear. Everyone was running Canon or Nikon and that was it. So if you wanted a Canon lens, cool, you could grab whatever you want. But in 2020, Sony is king. So the reason I choose Sony is because I've had that experience. I've had multiple camera bodies since the inception of the mirrorless. I've used all the other brands and I still keep going back to Sony. Thanks for watching this week. I hope that has given you some insight onto why I choose the Sony product. If you have any questions, hit me up on Instagram. My Instagram is @Codagram and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have gear related or Sony product related. Thanks for watching.